Scripture reading this morning is from the book of Luke, chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd, so he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. "Zacchaeus," he said, "quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today." Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. "He has gone to the guest of a notorious sinner," they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, "I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much." Jesus responded, "Salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost."
Some of you are new enough to our church that you don't know this part of our story, part of our history. The pastor at our church before me, my predecessor, who was a friend of mine, colleague of mine, father of my best friend whose family still attends here, he was the victim of gun violence. He owned a CrossFit gym. He went to work one morning to open his business. There were people there who intended to rob the adjacent business. They mistook him for that business's owner. They approached him. He resisted, and they shot him, and he died on the scene. Now, for us, in the weeks and the months that followed, amidst incredible grief, we were all asking what you ask, right? In moments when things like this happen, is like, what should happen now? Right? What happens now? What do we want to happen now? What can we tell ourselves? What should we tell ourselves as a way of bringing any kind of healing or comfort or hope? A horrible wrong had been done. Now what? If you have not been here, this is week 7 of a sermon series I'm calling Come As You Are. The basic idea here is anybody that comes to faith, religion, church, God, Jesus for the first time, or for the first time in a long time, it's because they want something. They're looking for something. It's selfishly motivated, and that's not negative. That's not a bad thing. God, through Jesus and the church, wants to meet every person right where they are. It's the only place God can meet anyone, and it is the place where God meeting you there, in that moment, in that thing, whatever you perceive to be your need, that's the way you grow in your love for God. I mean, just because you are at church this morning does not, I do not assume that you love God just because you happen to be here. People come to church for all kinds of reasons, for all sorts of motivations. But the hope is that at some point, you go from being someone who doesn't love God, doesn't care about God, you're doing your own thing, and you become someone who actually loves God. I mean, what the church is trying to do is really hard, but it's not complicated. It's not difficult. It's not hard to understand. We're trying to help people who don't love God love God. And all the good things then kind of flow out of that. Well, where that fruit of love for God starts to grow is when God first loves you. When you experience God loving you in your life in very concrete ways, that's the place where you start to love God. So in this series, all we're doing is we're just looking at some of the places where God meets us as we are. We've talked about guilt. We've talked about identity, suffering, belonging. Today I want to talk about justice or injustice. When things happen in your life that you say that's wrong, that should not have happened, it should not happen. Or when you look out into the world, you see something on the news, you see something that happens to another person, whatever, and there's that sense in you like it should not be this way. These sorts of things should not happen. They should not be allowed to happen. For some people, that hunger and thirst for things to be right sometimes brings them around to church and God and faith. So we're going to talk about justice. Talk about injustice because that's where we feel it. What do we mean by injustice? I mean, someone gets away with something. Someone does something they should not have done and they get away with it. So when we see things that are not good, they're not right, they're not fair, and nothing happens to fix it, that's an injustice. So if someone is denied employment, otherwise qualified, but they're denied employment for non-work related factors like age or religion or ethnicity, that's an injustice. That's not fair. That shouldn't happen. If one country invades another one for no other reason because they want to take land, I would hope we would call that an injustice. That should not happen. You should not be allowed to do that. And I would hope we would call it an even greater injustice if we sat down with that country and said, you know what, if you would just stop killing people, we'll give you some of the land that you came to steal. If someone broke into your house and started terrorizing your family, I think you would consider it an injustice if city council got involved and told them, hey, stop terrorizing that family, you can have their living room. There are things that happen in this world that you look at it and it's not complicated. It might be controversial. You might upset somebody by saying it. But there are things in this world that you look at and you know that you know that you know that you know that is wrong. It should not happen. It should never have happened. And it shouldn't be allowed to happen. Now, that last example is something that the Jews in Jesus' day would have been particularly attuned to, because this is what happened to them. This is what they were living in. Sovereign people, they've got their own land, they're doing their own thing, and then one day, the Roman Empire just shows up. And because they've got bigger guns and they can throw their weight around, they just move in, they conquer the nation of Israel, they subjugate them militarily, they impose on them a foreign government, complete with an oppressive taxation system that made their already difficult lives that much more unbearable. Every Jew in Jesus' day recognized that as an injustice. You should not be allowed to do that. Just because you are bigger and you have bigger weapons does not mean that you should be able to just roll in and take away somebody's sovereignty. Every Jew felt that in his bones. This is not right. This should not be, should not have happened, shouldn't be allowed to happen. Now, if it was an injustice that Rome invaded and imposed their taxes to begin with, it was a double injustice that one of their own would collaborate with them. And that's what's happening here. This character named Zacchaeus, he's described as a chief tax collector. He's very wealthy. Many of you know this. But when the Romans would move in, of course, it takes a lot of money to pay for that big military industrial complex. So you got to tax people. So you're going to tax the people that you've conquered, but you don't know the language, you don't know the customs, you don't know the town, you don't know the who's, the insider baseball politics. So what you do is you go tap somebody who lives there. He's a Jew, he knows the language, he knows the customs, he knows everybody, he knows how it works. You're going to collect our taxes for us. Now, obviously, that was not a very attractive position, and I think it would be a mistake to assume that Zacchaeus volunteered for this. He may have, that's possible. It's also possible that he just had the skills and he was forced to do it. But Zacchaeus becomes this tax collector. So he's the guy who has to sit at the booth while all of his neighbors come to the door, and he's the one that has to tell them what they owe. They all hated him for doing it, so in order to get him to do it, Rome had to pay him well. And that's how you got people to do it. So they became rich off of their brothers and sisters' pain and suffering. And to add insult to injury, the Romans were perfectly fine if you cooked the books in your favor, and many of them did. So when you're described as a chief tax collector and you're very wealthy, it's because you were paid well to do a job that everybody hated you for, and you typically leveraged it to cheat people. As I have said since I was in high school, if you have that much money, you probably stole it. And that's what he did. Everyone in his town hated him for it because for them, rightly, this was an injustice. You shouldn't do this. You should not use your position to get yourself rich at the expense of other people so that it hurts them and they suffer. That's not fair. It's not right. It is not right that some people have way more than they need, especially if they got it through improper means, while other people struggle to have the basic essentials. That's not right. That's not fair, and everybody knows it. Everybody feels that on some level. His Jewish brothers and sisters felt that. They hated him for it. You have experiences in your life where you feel the exact same way. And I'm not talking about just, think like legal, political, social, big stuff. I'm talking about in your house. People say and do things that hurt you, that harm you, that you know are wrong. They shouldn't be allowed to happen. They should stop. Something should happen to fix it. I know, we look at in our lives, we look around, we feel it, we experience it. Things happen that should not happen. We know to call them injustices. It's not right. It's not fair. Shouldn't be allowed. What we don't often do is take a step back and go, well, where does that come from? Where does that come from? I was talking to somebody after church. They gave me an example that their little girl goes to preschool, and she's been struggling to go to preschool because when it comes time to clean up the toys, she's cleaning up the toys while the boys in her class are running around and playing. She says, that's not fair, Mom. Why do I have to clean the toys up? Why don't they have to clean up their toys? Why don't I get to play? She's 5. She hasn't taken some advanced theology class. She just, inside, you just have this sense of, wait a minute, something's not right here. We all experience it, all feel this, right? A lot of times we don't take a step back to go, well, where's it come from? How is it that all people, even 5-year-olds, have this kind of innate sense of what we would call fairness or fair play? That we're supposed to work with each other in certain ways and do certain things and not do certain things. For them, it was explicit. For them, they came from God. Before God constituted these people called the Israelites, he called a man named Abraham. And the idea here was simple. All right, I'm going to pick you. I'm going to bless you. You're going to have you're going to have kids. Your kids are going to have kids. Their kids are going to have kids. Eventually, you're going to be this big nation, lots of people. And then through you, I'm going to bless the whole world. So I'm going to take one people group, I'm going to work with them very carefully, very specifically, and then through them, I'm going to bless everybody. That was the big vision. So it is not incidental that when God called Abraham, the patriarch of these people, he said to Abraham, I want you to lead these people with justice and righteousness. They are the two of the biggest words in the Hebrew Bible. I don't mean in terms of the actual length of the word, I mean the concepts. Justice and righteousness. You are to be characterized by justice and righteousness, God says. What does that mean? When I say righteousness, you think righteousness is like a personal, internal, moral thing. I am a righteous person if I am like a morally pure person. And don't get me wrong, righteousness has a personal, moral component to it. But righteousness is a social word. It is a thing that exists between people, not in them. An easy way to remember this is just think right Right-usness instead of righteousness. Right-usness. We live rightly with one another. We treat each other well. We're fair to each other. We do what is good and right. We honor each other. So when God comes to Abraham, God says that's going to characterize you. You're going to be people who honor each other. You're going to love each other, take care of each other, honor each other, right? That's how you're going to work. Okay, what happens when you don't? Because sometimes you won't. What then? That's where justice comes in. Justice in a Hebrew tradition is when right-usness is broken, you do what you need to do to fix it, to bring it back together. Okay, so an example from their life. You borrow my ox. You need an ox. You don't have one. You got to plow your ground. You got to feed your kids. You don't have an ox. I have one. You come to me. You ask if you can borrow my ox. It is righteousness to let you. It would be wrong of me to withhold that from you. You're my brother. You're my friend. You need something. I have it. I'm going to let you borrow it. That's righteousness. If I said, sorry, can't help you, that would be wrong of me. That would be me communicating to you that I don't care about you, that I don't care about your well-being. That'd be wrong. So I'm going to let you borrow my ox. Okay, now it's your responsibility to go use my ox and then deliver it back to me. Now, if something happens, like an accident's happened, that's no big deal. But what if you were negligent? What if you did something you should not have done? What if you were irresponsible? And something happens to my ox. It gets hurt, it dies, it gets stolen. See, now righteousness has been broken. Not because I lost my ox. That's not the point. The point is you did something that communicates to me you don't care about me. That's what's been broken. That's what needs to be repaired. Now, in this case, how do you do that? Well, it's easy. You restore my ox. You give me another ox. You have to pay and you have to endure the pain and the suffering to give me back my ox. Not because it makes me whole materially. It does do that. But because that's the gesture that makes us whole relationally. It is the thing that communicates to me you care about my well-being. You're not just in it for yourself. I'm important to you. And you recognize that you want to honor me just as I wanted to honor you. That's justice. Justice is a repairing of the breach. It's doing what needs to be done in order to restore righteousness. Now, this is the part of this equation where I think we struggle with this. And they did too. They did too. You can see it. If in their tradition, justice is you do what needs to be done in order to repair the relationship. When you heard that story a minute ago, does that sound to you like what they were interested in? The people in the story? I mean, Zacchaeus had been ripping them off for years. So he had broken righteousness. They knew it. They felt it. Do you get any sense from the story that they're sitting around going, oh, thank God he's meeting with Jesus. Maybe Jesus can help. Is that their attitude? Do they have any real care or concern for Zacchaeus at all? It doesn't seem like it to me. Jesus chooses to go to his home, and their reaction is, ugh. I can't believe Jesus would go to the house of a notorious sinner. And that word is not just, that phrase, it's not just an insult, it's a category. See, if it were up to them, I think, if it were up to them, they would have killed him. They would have stoned Zacchaeus a long time ago for what he did. But they didn't have that power. So they did the next best thing, they iced him out. Notorious sinner is a category of people who are no longer allowed to come to synagogue because of how they've lived. So he had literally been kicked out of their community. He was not formally allowed to be a part of their social fabric. We can't kill you, but we can treat you as if you were dead. They hate him. And they are not at all interested in him changing or being transformed or healed. What they are interested in is pain for pain. That seems to be what they want. You wronged us, you hurt us, we are just going to hurt you back. We want you to feel the pain that you have made us feel. Now, when you hear that, that is the definition of vengeance, retribution. In Western culture, we call it justice. When we talk about justice in our tradition, it is not the same as the Hebrew concept of justice. In most cases, it has nothing to do with helping or transforming or changing the offender. It is just pain for pain. You did a bad thing, you made us hurt, we are now going to make you hurt. And we don't much care what effect that has on you. We should call that vengeance, because that's what it is. But we don't. We call it justice. And it seems to be our default mode. Well, whatever. It's my default mode. Maybe it's not yours. It is mine. When I am wronged, when I am hurt, when someone has done something to me that they absolutely should not have done, my default impulse in many cases is I just want to hurt back. I'm not actually thinking about the welfare of the other person. I'm just angry at the other person. And because they've made me hurt, I want them to know what that feels like, regardless of the impact it has on them. That's my impulse. I'm guessing that's probably your impulse in most cases. And it seems to be the thing that God was trying to work out of these people by calling Abraham in the first place. Telling Abraham to lead these people with justice and righteousness, right? Live rightly with each other. And when you don't, because sometimes you won't, fix it. Do the things that are necessary to come back together, to heal, to become the kinds of people who stop doing that. But somehow along the way, justice turned into what it has become for us. We're not really interested in repairing the relationship. We just want to inflict pain. That was never God's design. It was never the idea. I mean, just as an example, many of you've read the Old Testament, or at least you've heard plenty of it read. You know that in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible, there is a command that the Israelites are allowed to exact eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, life for life. Someone takes your eye, you take their eye. They take your hand, you take their hand. Now, from our perspective, that looks like just sanctioned vengeance. That's what that sounds like. They hurt you, you hurt them. That's the system, that's how it works. What you may not realize is that those commands were meant to accomplish the exact opposite. It wasn't to sanction retribution, it was to curb it. We have a hard time understanding this, but in the ancient world, where they didn't have a legal system, they didn't have a justice system, the way it worked was escalating retribution. That's how it happened. You hurt my brother, I'm going to kill yours. And if I kill your brother, there's a good chance you're going to kill my family. And if you kill my family, there's a good chance I'm going to come slaughter your village. And it's just going to go like that. You're going to insult me? Well, I'm going to insult you more. You're going to ignore me? Well, I'm going to ignore you more. You're going to say hurtful things? I'm going to say more hurtful things. And this is just the way of the world. This is how it goes. Bing, bing, bing. And it just gets worse. You can look at the story of what Jacob's sons do when they find out their sister Dinah had been sexually assaulted. They slaughter every man in the village, and then they steal all the women and children. This is the world. This is how they do it, okay? And that's just how the ancient world went. So it's like God comes to Abraham and these people, and he says, look, I know this is what's normal for you, but it's not going to be normal among us. We're not going to live this way. Now, you're not ready to hear things like forgiveness. I get it. Okay, fine. So where we're going to start is if someone hurts you, you can't hurt them back any more than they hurt you. Like, let's just start there. Take that step for me. We're just not going to escalate and make it worse. So what sounds like vengeance or sanctioned retaliation on one level is actually a movement in the direction of mercy. It's one small step in the direction of people not retaliating at all. And that's why when Jesus comes along, he looks at people and he says, I know you've heard it said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. I know you've heard it said that because I know the Bible says that. I get it. But I'm telling you, we're not going to do that anymore. So now I'm telling you, don't resist an evil person. And if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn and offer them the other as well. Because what Jesus is interested in is not justice as you and I typically understand that word. If that's what justice was all about, then if someone slaps you on the cheek, you slap them back. Because that's what it's about. It's about pain for pain. But if what justice is about is the transformation of the offender so that they stop slapping people, so that you can live rightly with one another, slapping them back is like the worst thing that you can do. It's just going to harden them in their way of being. It's going to sanction slapping. So what Jesus says is, try turning the other cheek. It's risky. It is risky. There's a good chance he'll hit you again. When you get insulted, Jesus would say, do not retaliate. It's risky. He might insult you again. She might insult you again. It might continue. It's risky. But if what you really care about is the transformation of the other person, it is also the best option for that person actually changing. It's not weakness. It is an act of active, nonviolent resistance. It is your way of saying what you just did was wrong. You should not have done it, and you should never do it. I am not going to do it in return. Do you want to keep doing it? Is that the kind of person you want to be? Or would you like to take this moment to think it over and change? See, if what you care about is the kind of justice that restores people because it changes them, then that's the kind of action that you want. And this happens all the time. Like in our homes, we call this collusion. You've lived it. You've worked the cycle. You got somebody in your house that does a certain thing and you don't like it. And so like you choose a kind of I don't want to say evil, but not helpful way of responding. You know, someone leaves their clothes on the floor, and, so what you do is you call them lazy and you nag them, and then you're shocked that they don't pick the clothes up. The same exact thing happened with Zacchaeus here. Did them icing Zacchaeus out, did it change his life? No, it just hardened him. It's like, look, if you're going to hate me and ice me out, then at least I'm going to get rich in the process. Forget you. It just made it worse. Pain for pain makes it worse. Every single time. But if what you want is you want the other person to transform, to change, punishment, pain may not always be the best tactic. I mean, some of you have been raised in Christian environments. I'd actually like to see a show of hands. How many of you were raised in a Christian environment where at some point someone told you God is just? Did you ever hear that phrase? Okay, hands down. And when they said it, what they meant was, because God is just, God must punish every act of evil and sin and wrongdoing. Was that the definition you got? That's what justice means. That God is required to punish every act of sin. I just want to tell you that idea is nuts. And it is not hard to appreciate. You just put yourself in the role of God. You're the parent. You got kids. Are you required to punish every act of sin and wrongdoing that your kids perpetrate? What if you did? Can you imagine? Now, obviously you can't. Like, you don't have the capacity to do it. But let's just magically imagine you did. You could. What would happen to your kids? Like, who would they become? I want you to think about the impact that it would have if every single time your child said or thought or did something that was wrong or inappropriate or harmful, that you had to punish them for it. They would grow up to be monsters. Monsters. Because you know, as a good, wise parent, that's silly. You would never do that. Sometimes you need to exact punishment. Sometimes you need to do that. But the reason that you do it is so that your kids will learn. The point of the punishment is not pain for pain's sake. It's educational. You're trying to get them to make a connection. You did bad things happen to you. Stop doing bad thing. That's what you're trying to do. And you're hoping that that will help them to learn, okay, I don't want to do these things anymore because this is the consequence for it. So sometimes you do exact punishment, but it's for the sake of learning. Sometimes you realize they don't need punishment to learn. The learning has already happened. They've already been impacted. That change has already occurred, and punishment is only going to make it worse. Why do you think Zacchaeus rolled into this religious parade that day? You ever thought about this? This guy clearly does not care at all about God. He does not care about treating people right. He gets wind of the fact that this renowned religious teacher is coming to town and there's going to be this big parade where he is not welcome. And he chooses to come. Why would Zacchaeus go to that religious parade? My best guess, only because I have been him, my best guess is that he knew exactly what he was doing was wrong. He knew he shouldn't be doing it. On some level, he didn't want to. He felt shame. He felt guilt. He probably experienced some self-loathing. But because he'd gone down that road for so long, he just, the prospect of change is pretty daunting. And it becomes easier, it's easier to justify. And again, you've all done this. You've all experienced this. When you wrong another person, all you care about is how awesome you are and how terrible the other person is, how much they deserved it, how right you are. And the longer you go down that road, the more justified you feel, the more horrible they become in your mind, the more virtuous you become. I think that's him. On some level, you know that what you're doing is wrong, that you just can't stop yourself because you've gone down that road for so long. So he goes to the parade. And I think Jesus saw all that. I think he knew all that. Zacchaeus isn't somebody who needs to be punished, at least according to Jesus. He does need something. He needs Jesus. And that's what he gets. That's what he gets. And you notice the outcome. I love this scene because you don't know what Jesus says. I have no idea what happened in that house. All you get is Jesus and Zacchaeus going into the house and Zacchaeus coming out of the house a changed man. He comes out and he says, listen, I'm giving half of my wealth away. I'm giving half of my wealth away, and if I've cheated anybody, I'll pay him back fourfold. And Jesus, you see what he calls him? A true child of Abraham. That's exactly right. That's exactly how you're supposed to live. You did a wrong thing. You shouldn't have done it. You never should have done it. But you can make it right. You can acknowledge it. You can say you were wrong. You can ask the other person for forgiveness. And then in a situation like this, you can pay them back. Not so that they're whole, but so that you are whole. You are right again. And that's what Zacchaeus goes and does. Jesus calls that salvation. That's what it looks like to be a saved person. Not to never do anything that harms another person, but when it happens, that we take the steps necessary to fix it so that we are healed, right? Now, I like to think the long-term Christian hope, because these seem to be the narratives on offer. This whole sermon, as I've been talking about injustice, I would put money on you have thought of yourself either as the victim or the perpetrator. Some of you have thought this entire sermon about yourself as the victim. You're thinking about other people who have harmed you and wronged you. That's okay, because people do harm you and they wrong you. And that's a legit thing, and they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't be allowed to do it, and steps should be taken to heal and fix it. I doubt many of you have been thinking about yourself as the perpetrator, as the one who's doing the wrong, harming other people, thinking things you should not think, saying things you should not say, doing things that you should not do. When we experience injustice like this from a Christian perspective, it seems like the hope that people carry with them is either, well, someday, let's think about the guys who killed our friend. In a lot of Christian circles, the hope is either, don't worry, they're going to get what's coming to them in the end. They're going to suffer eternally for not following Jesus and for not living the way that they're supposed to do. I hope that feels to you basically non-Christian. Like, I would hope that you would never take any sort of hope or comfort in the fact that someone's going to be eternally tormented. That's like basically Christian. But it seems like the other hope for a lot of people is like, don't worry, God's just going to like magically make it go away. Like maybe those people will say yes to Jesus someday and God will just pretend like it never happened. Which to me is not very comforting either. What if everybody gets to sit down like Zacchaeus got? What if every single person at some point is going to sit with Jesus just like Zacchaeus did? And you're going to have to talk it over. And if there is anything in your life that does not belong, you're going to have to deal with it. And that conversation could be immensely painful. Love is fierce. It is not safe. It is fierce. That God loves you so much that there's nothing in your life that does not belong that will be allowed to belong. On some level, that should be a kind of scary proposition. You're going to have a sit down. But the point of this sit down is not pain for pain. It's not retribution. It's not to harm you. It's to change you. It's to transform you. So you walk out of it recognizing that is not who I want to be. I do not want to live that way. I do not want to treat people that way. I'm going to go make it right so that we live rightly together. I think that's the long-term hope. That when we talk about a time of no pain, no suffering, no tears, well, it's because we will no longer be the people who cause any of that. That we will once again live rightly with one another because we have a God who does justice. Justice rightly understood. So this morning, we're going to finish our service by taking communion together. And this is your invitation. If you are someone who struggles with injustice, meaning things that other people have done to harm you, if you struggle with that, you have been the victim of other people's wrongdoing, communion is an opportunity to recognize that you serve a God of unfailing love and faithfulness. God is faithful. God will be faithful to those people, meaning God will give them exactly what they need to become the people they were supposed to be. And you can entrust them to God's care. But when you take these elements, the bread that represents Jesus' body and the juice that represents his shed blood, you are also participating in this narrative as a perpetrator. You are acknowledging that God will be faithful to you too. He will not allow anything to remain in you that does not belong, that does unrighteousness to people. if that's something that you want, then the invitation is to come forward. It's to be a part of the church. It is to entrust yourself to God, to acknowledge that you say and think and do things that harm others. You do injustice in this world, but that God is faithful in love to transform you. In just a minute, I'm going to invite you to stand with me if you're able. If you've not done this before, we invite you to come down our center aisle here. We'll have communion distributors on both sides of our stage. They will say to you the body and blood of Christ. I invite you to say amen, and then take a prepackaged communion cup back to your seat using the side aisles. You can take those elements during this last song as you feel that. I'll come up in a minute or two to close our time. Stand with me if you're able. Let me pray and then come to the table. God, we thank you that you are a God of unfailing love and faithfulness. Help us to recognize, to call your faithfulness justice, that because you love us so much that you will deal with us according to what we do and what we've done, and that's good for us. I pray this morning that we would entrust others to your care, to those who do harm and do wrong, that we trust you to be faithful to them, to transform their lives. And we entrust ourselves to you. You would be faithful to us too. We love you. We thank you for who you are, for your vision for our life and for our lives together. Use these elements this morning to continue to do that work in us, that we might live rightly with you and with one another. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You call the sun to rise. You lay it down to rest. You hold this heart of mine. You hold my every breath. Such an awesome God, so mighty. So holy, so wonderful, such an awesome God, so selfless, so generous, so faithful you are. Oh, you are. Yes, you are. In everything, you're faithful, God. Seated in majesty, reigning in holiness, the table is set for me. For you are the living bread, such an awesome God, so selfless, so holy, so wonderful, such an awesome God, so selfless, so generous, so faithful you are, and nothing comes close. the Son of God, hung on a cross to die, but not even death itself could hold you down, for you rose to life. Such an awesome God, so mighty, so holy, so wonderful. Such an awesome God, so selfless, so generous, so faithful you are. Such an awesome God. Such an awesome God, so mighty, so holy, so wonderful. Such an awesome